Order! Order! You are an incorrigible delinquent at times. Behave yourself, man!
On Thursday, nominations closed in the 650 parliamentary seats across the country. So we now know exactly who's standing in the general election. We've been analysing the party's candidates to find out what they might tell us about the makeup of the House of Commons after June the 8th. Well, we know Theresa May is committed to delivering Brexit, and analysis of Conservative candidates has shown that in their top 100 target seats, 37 candidates supported Leave during last year's referendum campaign, 20 supported Remain, and 43 have not made public which side they supported. In the last Parliament, the vast majority of Labour MPs were hostile to Jeremy Corbyn. So how supportive are Labour candidates of the leader? Well, in 50 of Labour's top 100 target seats, 17 candidates have expressed support for Mr Corbyn. 20 candidates supported Owen Smith in last year's leadership contest or have expressed anti-Corbyn sentiment, and 13 have remained neutral. If they won those, the Labour benches would be marginally more sympathetic to Mr Corbyn than they are now. What do the figures tell us about where the other parties are standing? Well, the Lib Dems have decided not to stand against the Greens in Brighton Pavilion and are fielding 629 candidates this year. That's 2 fewer than 2015. The number of UKIP candidates has fallen dramatically. They're standing in 247 fewer constituencies than 2015, throwing their support behind solidly pro-Brexit Tories in some areas such as Lewis and North Norfolk. The Greens are fielding 103 fewer candidates than in the last election, standing down to help other progressive candidates in some places. The SNP are standing in all 59 Scottish seats, and Plaid Cymru in all the Welsh constituencies. Isabel, the most striking statistic there is the demise in UKIP candidates. Is this their swan song?
I think it is, and I think it is absolutely remarkable how few UKIP candidates are standing. Of course, that is benefiting, as far as we can see so far from all the research, going straight into the hands of the Tories. And it's hard to see that they will suddenly sort of revive in the next couple of years. I think this is probably the end. Well, Frank Luntz mentioned the fragmentation of the left was a feature of this election. But equally, even more of a feature is the consolidation of the right. And if you take these two things together, that could explain why the polls are where they are.
Absolutely, and there is absolutely no surprise, therefore. That's precisely what happened at the start of the 1980s. The right was incredibly united, and that's the last time we started talking about Tory majorities of over 100 or so. But the story of this election, without a doubt, will be, no matter what the size of Theresa May's majority ends up, because that's quite frankly the only thing left in dispute, it will be the total collapse of UKIP. And it's not just because we are now leaving the EU, and therefore that was their raison d'etre. It's also because a whole lot of people voted UKIP because they thought the mainstream parties, particularly the Tories, were no longer listening to the small C Conservatives, annoyed about social changes, etc. Theresa May has given the impression that she is listening to them, and that is the biggest possible thing that could happen to the Tory vote. Fragmentation of the left? Consolidation of the right?
It's one of the lessons that the centre-left never learn, which is that, yeah, it happened in the 80s. It really doesn't take much for the whole thing to fracture. So now you've got arguably on the centre-left, the SNP, the Labour Party, the Greens, the Liberal Democrats with a Social Democrat leader, all competing for the same votes. And when you have fleetingly, perhaps, large numbers coalescing on the right in one party, there's only going to be one outcome. And it happens regularly. It doesn't mean the Tories haven't got their own fragilities. Remember, only 2 years ago, Cameron and Osborne were the dominant figures. Neither are in Parliament now, which is a symptom, I think, of a fragility that perhaps this election is disguising.
Mrs May's position, in a way, reminds me of Mrs Thatcher in the 80s. I won't be outflanked on the right. of Sarkozy in France. I won't be outflanked on the right. So the National Front didn't get through either times that he ran to the second round, unlike this time. And now Mrs May, almost on Brexit, is not going to be outflanked either, and as a result has seen off her right flank.
And also she's looking to the left as well with some of the state interventions. I thought what was interesting about the analysis that you showed a few minutes ago was the number of Tory candidates who have apparently not declared what way they voted in the referendum. And you would have thought if this election was all about Brexit, as some would claim, then that would become an unsustainable position. And actually more it's about leadership, up to the point that I'm now hearing from a number of Labour candidates that they're getting leaflets, they're seeing Tory leaflets that don't even have the Tory candidate's name on them except on the imprint. It is just about Theresa.
Well, I'm glad they're just keeping to the law, because they have to put, I think,
they have to put
by
it on
law,
there
they have
somewhere.
to put it on. It's been harder for some of the smaller parties too, because of the speed with which the election's been called. For the Greens, UKIP to some extent, and other of the smaller parties. But we've got the manifestos coming out this week. I think Labour for sure on Tuesday. We're not yet sure when the Tories are going to bring theirs out. I would suggest one thing. It will, at least for people like me, bring an end to the question you'll have to wait till the manifesto, and for that alone we should welcome them.
And Rebecca Long-Bailey will never have that excuse ever again. Isn't it wonderful?
She's not been the only one. Tories have used it with me as well.
I'm told Thursday would be a good day to book your train seat to wherever it is the Tories decide to unveil their
They won't do it
manifesto.
in London, you don't think? No.
Don't think so, but why? I mean, when you're trying to take the North and the Midlands off Labour, I would go to one or the other. For me, I can barely hold back my excitement over the Tory manifesto. I mean, this will be, I think, the most important day for the British government for the next 5 years, because we will...
So that wasn't British irony there. This
You actually meant it.
You actually meant that.
I'm being normal. I'm not even being cynical at all on the Sunday politics. I know that's the diet we're supposed to follow.
Very well.
So, but this is a huge day, and I tell you why, because this is, I think we'll see, I don't think Mrs May is going to play it safe, and I don't think we're going to get this sort of broad brush stuff, don't take any risks, as perhaps Linton Crosby would advise her to do. I think she's going to lay out precisely what it is she wants to do over the next 5 years and take some quite big risks because she can, because they're poorly. And then, finally then, after a year of all this guessing and theorising, we'll finally work out what Mrs May is really all about.
Well, my understanding is that she doesn't want the next Parliament to be all about Brexit, though she knows that's the most important thing for her, that she has to deliver in some way. So she gets a mandate for that if the polls are right. But she does have very different ideas from Mr Cameron about how to run a country. She will, I assume, want a mandate for what these different ideas are.
Otherwise, there's no point in holding an early election. I mean, you get the majority, but if you get a majority to carry on implementing the Cameron-Osborne agenda, which she clearly viewed with a degree of disdain, would be utterly pointless. So I agree with Tom, it is the pivotal event of the election, and it will be interesting to see the degree to which she expands on this line, which interests me, about it's time to look at the good that government can do, because in a way this moves the debate on in UK politics. From 97, the Blair-Brown governments were insecure about arguing about the role of government. The Cameron-Osborne government similarly so. So here you have a Labour Party talking about the role of government and the state, and a Tory leader apparently doing so as well. And I think that will be really interesting to see whether it is fleshed out in any significant way.
And it's not a natural Tory message. It has its historic precedents. Harold Macmillan talked about the role of the state. Even Ted Heath Mark II, who was pretty big on the state, incomes policy, industrial policy, and so on. And even if it's not thought to be that Tory, does she get away with it because she delivers such a big victory, if that's what she does deliver?
Well, just to inject a little note of scepticism here, I wonder also how much of this is authentically Theresa. I was very interested to meet up with somebody who used to sit in on cabinet meetings all the way through the coalition years in which apparently Theresa May never expressed an opinion on anything outside the Home Office brief. Other ministers were roving all over their colleagues' briefs. As for Theresa, she was just interested.
So where are
in
the
her own
ideas coming
things.
from?
Well, I think we could probably point to Nick Timothy.
He's writing the manifesto. He's one of her closest advisors in Downing Street.
Absolutely. So it will just be interesting to see how that evolves.
I think on Thursday, as a bet, I think we'll be all talking about something called Erdington Toryism.
Crumbs.
We will. How are you going to get that in a Sun headline? You have to reduce to Erd.
This is the beauty of Sun headliners. We can do whatever we want with pithy phrases. But Erdington Toryism, Erdington is the suburb of Birmingham where Nick Timothy comes from, who is very much Theresa May's policy brain and leading inspiration in terms of where the party wants to go. And Erdington Toryism is basically all about connecting the party with traditional working class voters, small c conservatives. And their belief to do that is not just taking away government out of their lives, but showing them that government can actually help their lives. Government can be a force for good to rebuild all that lost trust over the years, why perhaps so many voted UKIP.
But a lot of what Mrs May talks about in this kind of blue-collar Toryism it is talk. I mean, and a lot of it then suddenly goes by the wayside. What happened to worker directors on the boards and things like that? She does seem to throw out ideas. It's designed to appeal perhaps to that constituency, and then nothing happens.
Now, she had an excuse before in the sense that it wasn't in the 2015 manifesto.
And she had a small majority.
And she had a small majority, so therefore she arguably had to water down some of the stuff, for example, in her Tory conference speech, which had a lot of this active government material in it. Now, if she puts it in the manifesto, it's a sign that she, A, plans to do it and will have no excuse if she then gets nervous afterwards, because it will be in there. And it is part, if it wasn't for Brexit, this great overwhelming issue of our times, I think this election will be seen as quite a significant development in terms of an argument around the role of government, much needed, but Brexit unfortunately overshadows it all.
As much as we like arguments about the role of government, it's our meat and drink, in the end we're going to hear strong and stable and strong leadership ad nauseum, aren't we?
Absolutely, and you know, we heard the same old lines from Labour Party as well, so you know, they're all at it, aren't they?
Only what, 3 weeks and a bit to go?
You cynics, you pair of you. It's going to be a fascinating week. Stop talking it down.
I'm still talking there. They are still talking. Shut them up. Thanks to our panel.